The outcast's discovery. In the bustling spaceport of Zephyria, a nexus of intergalactic trade and cultural exchange, life teemed in all its weird and wonderful forms. Beings from 1,000 worlds mingled, bartered, and bickered amidst the cacophony of alien tongues and the pungent aromas of exotic cuisines. Yet even in this melting pot of diversity, there were those who found themselves cast aside, deemed unworthy by the fickle standards of galactic society. One such outcast was Crix, a Valaxian hound beast. Once prized for their loyalty and ferocious combat abilities, Valaxian hounds had fallen out of favor as the galaxy entered an era of uneasy peace. Crix, with his mottled purple hide, twisted horn, and cybernetic left eye, was considered particularly unsightly by his former masters. Abandoned in a dingy corner of the spaceport's lower levels, Crix had eked out a miserable existence for months. He subsisted on scraps tossed his way by the occasional sympathetic passerby, but most beings gave him a wide berth, repulsed by his appearance and the lingering reputation of his species. On this particular day, as Crix huddled in his usual spot near a malfunctioning waste disposal unit, his sensitive ears picked up an unusual commotion. Shouts and the thundering of many feet echoed through the Warren-like corridors of the spaceport's underbelly. Curiosity piqued, Crix raised his massive head, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on the source of the disturbance. A group of beings burst into view, their faces masks of terror. Crix recognized several species, a pair of trembling Arcturian merchants, a Zygonian dock worker, and a handful of others he couldn't immediately identify. They were being pursued by something that sent chills down Crix's spine. Slithering after the fleeing group was a nightmarish creature Crix had never seen before. It resembled a giant, iridescent centipede, but its segmented body pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Each of its countless legs ended in a wickedly sharp talon, and a cluster of eye stalks swiveled atop its head, scanning for prey. The fleeing beings scattered, some ducking into side passages, while others simply cowered against the walls. The monster, for Crix could think of no better word to describe it, paused, its eye stalks twitching as it decided which victim to pursue first. In that moment of hesitation, Crix made a decision that would alter the course of his life, and though he couldn't have known it then, the fate of the galaxy itself. With a guttural growl that reverberated through the corridor, he launched himself at the creature. Crix's cybernetic eye calculated trajectories and weak points in milliseconds as he soared through the air. His powerful jaws clamped down on the junction between the monster's head and its first body segment. The creature thrashed wildly, its legs scrabbling against Crix's tough hide. The battle was fierce but brief. Crix's augmented strength and natural ferocity proved too much for the alien monstrosity. With a final bone-crushing bite, he severed the creature's head from its body. The rest of it thrashed for a few moments before falling still. As the echoes of combat faded, Crix became aware of the stunned silence around him. The beings he had saved stared at him with a mixture of awe and lingering fear. He had saved their lives, yes, but he was still a Valaxian hound, a creature many of them had been raised to fear and despise. Crix backed away from the creature's corpse, his head lowered submissively. He expected the usual reaction: disgust, perhaps a few kicks or thrown objects to drive him away now that the danger had passed. Instead, he heard a single pair of hands begin to clap. The crowd parted, revealing a figure Crix hadn't noticed before. A human female stood there, her dark skin glistening with sweat and her eyes shining with admiration. She wore the practical, oil-stained coveralls of a starship mechanic, and a tool belt hung low on her hips. "Now that," the human said, her voice carrying clearly in the hushed corridor, was something else. "You're a hero, big guy." Crix tilted his head, confused by the praise. The human approached him slowly, her hand outstretched. Every instinct told Crix to flee or to bare his teeth in warning. But something in the human's steady gaze held him in place. "My name's Zara," she said as she drew closer, "and I think you and I have a lot to talk about." The other beings watched in astonishment as Zara's hand made contact with Crix's scarred snout. The Valaxian hound leaned into her touch, a low rumble of contentment emanating from deep in his chest. It was at that moment that the ship's security forces finally arrived, led by a puffing Jalorian official whose gelatinous body quivered with each wheezing breath. "What's the meaning of this?" the official demanded, his eye clusters darting between the slain monster, the crowd of shaken survivors, and the unlikely pair at the center of it all. Zara straightened up, keeping one hand reassuringly on Crix's neck. "Well, sir," she said with a grin, "I'd say we've just witnessed the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and possibly the salvation of this entire spaceport." The official's mouthparts worked silently for a moment as he tried to process the scene before him. I'll need a full report," he finally managed. "Oh, you'll get one," Zara assured him. "But first, I think our hero here deserves a proper meal and a checkup. Come on, Crix, let's get you cleaned up." As Zara led Crix away from the scene, whispers began to circulate among the gathered beings. The story of the ugly, abandoned hound who had become an unexpected hero began to spread through the spaceport like wildfire. Little did any of them know that this was only the beginning. The creature Crix had slain was not a lone anomaly, but the harbinger of a threat that would soon engulf not just Zephyria, but the entire galaxy. And in the face of that threat, the alliance forged that day between a discarded weapon of war and a human with an open heart would prove to be more important than anyone could have imagined. As they made their way through the winding corridors of the spaceport, Zara couldn't help but marvel at the being walking beside her. Crix moved with a fluid grace that belied his massive size, his cybernetic eye constantly scanning their surroundings. "You know," Zara said, breaking the comfortable silence that had fallen between them, "I've heard stories about Valaxian hounds all my life. Never thought I'd actually meet one, let alone owe my life to one." Crix rumbled softly, his organic eye meeting Zara's gaze. There was an intelligence there that took Zara's breath away. This was no mere animal, but a sentient being capable of complex thoughts and emotions. "I don't suppose you can talk, can you?" Zara asked, though she felt a bit foolish doing so. To her surprise, Crix's cybernetic eye flickered, and a mechanical voice emanated from a small speaker she hadn't noticed before. "Speech, difficult," the voice grated, "but understand." Zara's eyes widened. "Well, I'll be damned," she whispered. "You're just full of surprises, aren't you?" Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion up ahead. A group of dock workers were gathered around a comm screen, their faces pale with shock. "What's going on?" Zara called out as she and Crix approached. One of the workers, a spindly arachnoid, turned to her with all four of his eyes wide. "It's happening all over the sector," he chittered. "Monsters, like the one you just fought. They're popping up on stations, colonies, even some planets. Nobody knows where they're coming from or how to stop them." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. She looked down at Crix, seeing her own concern mirrored in his mismatched eyes. "I think," she said slowly, "we're going to need a bigger boat." As the gravity of the situation sank in, Zara realized that her chance encounter with Crix might have been more than just a stroke of luck. It could be the key to facing whatever threat was looming on the horizon. With renewed purpose, she squared her shoulders and addressed the gathered workers. "All right, listen up. We need to gather every scrap of information we can about these creatures, and we need to let people know that we found a way to fight them." She placed her hand on Crix's broad back. "This is Crix. He's a Valaxian hound, and he just took down one of those monsters single-handedly. If there are more of his kind out there, we need to find them. They might be our best hope." As the dock workers dispersed to spread the word and gather intel, Zara turned back to Crix. "I hope you're ready for this, big guy. Something tells me we've got one hell of a fight ahead of us." Crix's cybernetic eye wared as he processed her words. After a moment, his mechanical voice spoke again, clearer this time. "Ready," he said. "Protect. Fight." Zara grinned, feeling a surge of hope despite the dire circumstances. That's what I like to hear. Now, let's go see about getting you some armor. If we're going to war, we might as well do it in style. As they set off deeper into the spaceport, neither Zara nor Crix could have predicted the incredible journey that lay ahead of them. From outcasts to saviors, their story was about to become a legend that would echo across the stars for generations to come. A human's compassion. The Zephyria spaceport was in a state of barely controlled chaos. News of the monstrous incursions had spread like wildfire, causing panic among the station's diverse inhabitants. Amidst the turmoil, Zara and Crix made their way to the mechanic's workshop, where she spent most of her days tinkering with starship engines. As they entered the cluttered space, the acrid smell of oil and ozone filled the air. Crix's sensitive nose twitched, but he remained close to Zara's side, his cybernetic eye constantly scanning for potential threats. First things first, Zara muttered, more to herself than to Crix. She rummaged through a pile of discarded tech until she found what she was looking for, a battered but functional universal translator. With deft hands, she began to modify it, occasionally glancing at Crix's vocal apparatus. This might feel a bit strange, she warned as she approached him with the device. Crix remained still, trusting her completely as she attached the translator to his neck. There was a brief whine of feedback, then silence. Zara stepped back, wiping her hands on her coveralls. "All right, big guy, give it a try." Crix's organic eye blinked, and then a voice emanated from the translator, deeper and more natural sounding than the mechanical voice from his implant. I can speak clearly now." Zara's face split into a wide grin. "Sounds like it. How does it feel?" "Strange," Crix admitted, "but good. Thank you, Zara. Your kindness. It is not something I am accustomed to." The human's expression softened. "Yeah, well, get used to it. Now, tell me about these monsters. Have you ever encountered anything like them before?" Crix's massive head shook slowly. "No. In all my years as a warhound, I never saw creatures like this. They feel wrong. Unnatural." Before Zara could respond, an alarm blared throughout the station. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Attention all inhabitants. Multiple hostile entities detected in levels 17 through 23. This is not a drill. Security forces are en route. Please remain in your current locations and seal all bulkheads." Zara and Crix exchanged a look. "Well," Zara said, reaching for a plasma cutter and attaching it to her tool belt, "I guess we're about to get a closer look at these things." "You intend to fight?" Crix asked, a note of concern in his synthesized voice. "Damn right I do," Zara replied, her jaw set with determination. "I'm not about to sit back and let those things tear apart my home. You with me?" Crix's response was to bare his teeth in what Zara realized was a fierce grin. "Always." As they made their way through the winding corridors of the station, the sounds of battle grew louder. Screams mixed with the distinctive whine of energy weapons and the inhuman shrieks of the invading creatures. They rounded a corner and came face to face with one of the monsters. It was similar to the one Crix had killed earlier, but larger, its segmented body pulsing with an eerie bioluminescence. Multiple eye stalks swiveled to focus on them, and a maw lined with razor-sharp teeth opened in a horrifying screech. Without hesitation, Crix lunged forward, his powerful jaws clamping down on one of the creature's legs. The monster thrashed wildly, its talons scraping against Crix's tough hide. Zara didn't waste a moment. She activated her plasma cutter, the blue-white beam slicing through the air. With precision born from years of mechanical work, she targeted the junction between the creature's segments, severing its body in two. The monster's dying screech echoed through the corridor, but there was no time for celebration. More of the creatures were pouring in from a ruptured bulkhead. "We need to seal that breach," Zara shouted over the din of battle. Crix nodded, understanding immediately. He bounded towards the opening, using his massive bulk to block it temporarily. "Hurry," he called to Zara, I cannot hold them for long. Zara worked feverishly, her plasma cutter carving through the metal around the breach. Sweat poured down her face as she felt the heat of the monster's attacks on the other side of Crix's improvised barricade. Just as she was about to complete the seal, one of the creatures managed to slip past Crix. It lunged at Zara, its talons flashing in the emergency lighting. Time seemed to slow. Zara knew she couldn't dodge in time, knew that those razor-sharp claws were about to tear into her flesh. She closed her eyes, bracing for the impact. But it never came. She opened her eyes to see Crix standing over her, his jaws locked around the monster's throat. With a savage shake of his head, he snapped the creature's neck. "Finish it," he growled, already turning back to hold off the rest of the horde. Zara shook off her momentary shock and returned to her work. With a final burst from the plasma cutter, the breach was sealed. The remaining monsters on their side of the bulkhead were quickly dispatched by Crix and Zara, working in perfect tandem. As the last echoes of battle faded, Zara leaned against the wall, her breath coming in ragged gasps. That was too close. Crix padded over to her, his organic eye filled with concern. "Are you injured?" Zara shook her head. "No, thanks to you. You saved my life, Crix." The Valaxian hound lowered his head. "As you saved mine. We are, what is the human term? Even." A laugh bubbled up from Zara's chest, releasing some of the tension. "Yeah, big guy, we're even." She reached out to scratch behind his ears, marveling at how natural it felt to show affection to this being she had only met hours ago. Their moment of respite was short-lived. The station's intercom crackled to life once more. "Attention all security personnel and able-bodied volunteers. Multiple breaches reported on levels 12 through 16. Assistance required immediately." Zara straightened up, her face set with determination. Ready for round 2. Crix's cybernetic eye whirred as he focused on her. "With you, always." As they set off towards the new threat, neither of them noticed the small drone that had been observing their battle. Its singular lens focused on the unlikely pair, the human engineer and the Valaxian warhound, before zipping away to report its findings to its masters. Unbeknownst to Zara and Crix, their actions had not gone unnoticed. In the shadows of the galaxy, ancient powers were stirring, their attention drawn to this small pocket of resistance. The story of the outcast hound and the compassionate human was about to become part of something far greater than either of them could have imagined. As they raced towards the new breach, Zara's mind whirled with questions. Where were these monsters coming from? Why were they attacking now? And most importantly, how could they be stopped for good? She glanced at Crix, running steadily beside her, and felt a surge of determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew that together they stood a fighting chance. The galaxy might be in peril, but humanity, and its unlikely allies, were ready to face the threat head-on. Unlikely alliance forged. As Zara and Crix rushed towards the new incursion point, the corridors of Zephyria Station echoed with the sounds of panic and chaos. Emergency klaxons blared, and the flickering of damaged lighting systems cast eerie shadows on the walls. They rounded a corner to find a group of station security personnel pinned down by a swarm of the alien monstrosities. The security team's energy weapons seemed to have little effect on the creature's chitinous exoskeletons. Without hesitation, Crix leaped into the fray, his powerful jaws clamping down on the nearest monster. Zara wasn't far behind, her plasma cutter slicing through the air with deadly precision. "Fall back," Zara shouted to the security team. "We'll hold them off." The lead officer, a burly Taurian with cybernetic arms, looked at her in disbelief. "Are you insane? That's a Valaxian warhound." Zara gritted her teeth as she ducked under a monster's slashing talons. "Yeah, and he's the reason we're all still breathing. Now move." As the security team retreated to a more defensible position, Zara and Crix worked in perfect synchronization. Crix's brute strength and combat instincts complemented Zara's quick thinking and technological expertise. But for every monster they took down, two more seemed to take its place. They were slowly being pushed back, and Zara knew they couldn't keep this up forever. Just as the situation seemed most dire, a new sound cut through the cacophony of battle, the distinctive whine of high-powered iron engines. A sleek ship, unlike anything Zara had ever seen, appeared outside the station's viewports. Its hull seemed to shimmer, as if it wasn't quite solid. Before anyone could react, a beam of intense white light lanced out from the ship, vaporizing a swath of the alien creatures. The ship's external speakers crackled to life, and a voice that seemed to resonate on multiple frequencies simultaneously filled the air. Inhabitants of Zephyria Station, this is the Galactic Concordat. Stand down and prepare for emergency evacuation. Zara and Crix exchanged a confused glance. The Galactic Concordat was thought to be nothing more than a myth, a legendary alliance of advanced species that worked from the shadows to maintain balance in the universe. As the remaining monsters retreated in the face of this new threat, a shimmering portal opened in the middle of the corridor. 3 figures stepped through, each more alien and awe-inspiring than the last. The first was tall and willowy, with iridescent skin that seemed to ripple with colors. Its eyes were multifaceted, like those of an insect, but filled with an ancient intelligence. The second was short and stocky, its body seemingly composed of living crystal. Light pulsed through its form in complex patterns. The third defied easy description. It seemed to shift and change with each passing moment, as if it couldn't decide on a single form. The willowy being spoke, its voice melodious and otherworldly. I am Zilvax of the Ethereal Collective. These are my associates, Kronto of the Crystalline Nexus and Shift of the Formless Conclave. We represent the Galactic Concordat. Zara stepped forward, her plasma cutter still humming in her hand. I'm Zara, mechanic and apparently monster slayer. This is Crix. We'd love to chat, but in case you hadn't noticed, we're kind of in the middle of an invasion here. Kronta, the crystalline being, emitted a series of chiming tones that Zara somehow understood as laughter. Your species' propensity for understatement never ceases to amuse human. But you are correct, the situation is dire. Shift, the ever-changing entity, spoke next, its voice a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The creatures you face are known as the Void Swarm. They are an ancient enemy, one we thought long defeated. Their return threatens not just this station, not just your species, but the entire fabric of our galaxy. Crix growled low in his throat. Why have you come on me now? Many have already died. Zilvax turned its multifaceted eyes on the Valaxian hound. We came as soon as we detected the anomaly. But more importantly, we came because of you. Me? Crix's cybernetic eye whirred in confusion. Both of you, Zilvax clarified, gesturing to Zara and Crix. Your alliance, a human and a Valaxian warhound, working together against impossible odds. It was unexpected. It gives us hope. Zara frowned. Hope for what exactly? Kronto's crystalline form pulsed with urgent light. Hope that the younger races of this galaxy might yet have the strength and wisdom to face what is coming. The Void Swarm is but the vanguard of a much greater threat. Shift's form coalesced into something vaguely humanoid. We of the Concordat have watched and guided from afar for eons, but we cannot fight this battle alone. We need allies, beings like yourselves who can adapt, who can form bonds across the boundaries of species and prejudice. Zara looked at Crix, seeing her own mix of confusion and determination mirrored in his mismatched eyes. She turned back to the Concordat representatives. All right, I'm listening. What exactly are you proposing? Zilvax's iridescent skin rippled with what might have been approval. We propose an alliance. We will share our knowledge and technology, and in return, you will help us rally the peoples of this galaxy to face the coming storm. Kromta chimed in. Your station is but one of many flashpoints across the galaxy. We need beings like you, adaptable, resourceful, unbound by old hatreds, to go where we cannot, to inspire others to put aside their differences and unite against the common threat. Shift's form became mist-like. The choice is yours, but know that if we do not stand together, we will surely fall divided. Zara looked at Crix, a silent question in her eyes. The Valaxian hound nodded almost imperceptibly. "All right," Zara said, straightening her shoulders. "We're in, but I have conditions. First, we evacuate this station, every last being, not just the ones you deem important. Second, you tell us everything you know about these void swarm creatures and whatever's coming after them. And third," she paused, placing a hand on Crix's massive shoulder, "you help me find more of Crix's kind. If they're half as amazing as he is, we're going to need them." The three Concordat representatives exchanged looks, communicating in some silent alien manner. Finally, Zilvax spoke again. "Your terms are acceptable, Zora of Earth, Crix of Valaxia. Welcome to the Galactic Concordat. May your alliance be the first of many, for the storm that comes will test us all." As alarms continued to blare and the sounds of battle echoed in the distance, Zara and Crix stepped forward to join their new allies. The fate of not just Zephyria Station, but the entire galaxy now rested on the unlikely partnership between a human mechanic, a discarded warhound, and the mythical guardians of galactic order. Little did they know, their greatest challenges and their greatest triumphs still lay ahead. Galactic prejudices challenged. The evacuation of Zephyria Station was a chaotic affair, but with the combined efforts of Zara, Crix, and the Galactic Concordat, it proceeded far more smoothly than anyone could have hoped. As the last of the station's inhabitants were ushered onto the Concordat's massive evacuation ships, Zara found herself aboard the command vessel, staring out at the stars with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Crix padded up beside her, his cybernetic eye whirring as it took in the vastness of space. "I never thought I would see the stars like this," he said softly. Zara placed a hand on his broad back. "Me neither, big guy. Guess we're in this together, huh?" Their moment of quiet contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Zilvax, the willowy representative of the ethereal collective. "We are ready to depart," the alien announced. "Our next destination is the Valaxian homeworld." Crix's head snapped up, his organic eye wide with surprise. "Valaxia, but why?" Zilvax's iridescent skin rippled with what might have been sympathy. "As per Zara's request, we seek more of your kind to join our cause." And the alien hesitated. "There is something you both need to see." As their ship entered hyperspace, Zilvax briefed them on the situation. The void swarm, it turned out, was not a natural occurrence, but a weapon, one created by an ancient race known as the Nullifiers. The Nullifiers sought to remake the galaxy in their image, erasing all diversity and complexity in favor of a uniform, lifeless void. The Valaxians, Zilvax explained, were one of the first races to stand against the Nullifiers in the last Great War, eons ago. Their strength and loyalty were instrumental in driving back the enemy. But the cost, the alien trailed off as they dropped out of hyperspace, and Valaxia came into view. Crix let out a low, mournful howl. The planet was a wasteland. Vast swaths of the surface were scarred and barren, the remnants of ancient battles still visible from orbit. But here and there, pockets of green could be seen, life stubbornly clinging on against all odds. "Your people were all but wiped out," Zilvax said softly. "Those who survived were scattered across the galaxy, their true heritage forgotten. Many, like you, Crix, were reduced to servants or weapons in the eyes of other races." Zara felt a surge of anger. That's why Crix was abandoned, because nobody remembered what his people had sacrificed. Zilvax nodded sullenly. Prejudice and fear often arise from ignorance, but now, with the Nullifiers stirring once more, we have a chance to right old wrongs and forge new alliances. As they descended to the planet's surface, they were met by a small delegation of Valaxians. Unlike Crix, these hounds stood upright, wearing simple but elegant robes. Their leader, a grizzled veteran with a cybernetic limb, stepped forward. "I am Elder Vax," he growled. "The Concordat tells me you seek our aid. Why should we trust you, when the galaxy has shunned us for so long?" Crix moved forward, dropping to all fours in a gesture of respect. "Elder, I am Crix. I did not know of our history, our true purpose. I come seeking understanding, and to ask for your help in facing a threat that endangers us all." Elder Vax's eyes narrowed as he studied Crix. "You bear the marks of a warhound, yet you speak with wisdom. And you," he turned to Zara, "a human who stands as an equal with a Valaxian. Curious." Zara stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. "With all due respect, Elder, we don't have time for suspicion and old grudges. The Void Swarm is real, and it's tearing through the galaxy as we speak. Crix and I have fought them, and I'm telling you, we need all the help we can get." For a tense moment, silence reigned. Then, unexpectedly, Elder Vax burst out laughing. "By the ancient stars, you've got fire, human. Perhaps there is hope for this galaxy yet." The atmosphere immediately lightened. Elder Vax invited them to the last great city of Valaxia, a hidden metropolis nestled in a lush valley. As they walked through streets filled with Valaxians of all ages, Crix's eyes were wide with wonder. "I never knew," he whispered. "All this time, I thought I was alone." Zara squeezed his shoulder. "You're not alone anymore, Crix. And soon the whole galaxy is going to remember just how amazing your people are." Over the next few days, Zara and Crix shared their experiences with the Valaxian elders, while the Concordat representatives provided additional context on the looming threat. Slowly but surely, old prejudices began to crumble in the face of shared purpose. On the eve of their departure, Elder Vax called a grand assembly. Thousands of Valaxians gathered in the city's central plaza, their eyes fixed on the unlikely group standing before them. "My people," Vax's voice boomed out, "for too long, we have hidden ourselves away, nursing old wounds and old grudges. But the galaxy needs us once more. The nullifiers rise again, and with them comes a darkness that threatens all life." A murmur ran through the crowd. Vax continued, "But we do not stand alone. Look upon these beings, a human, a forgotten son of Valaxia, and the representatives of the Galactic Concordat. They come to us not as conquerors or masters, but as equals, as allies." He turned to Zara and Crix. "You have shown us that the bonds of friendship and loyalty can transcend the boundaries of species. You have reminded us of our true purpose, not as weapons or servants, but as protectors of life in all its beautiful diversity." Vax raised his cybernetic arm high. "I say it is time for the Valaxian people to emerge from the shadows. Time to reclaim our heritage and take our place among the stars once more. Who stands with me?" The roar of approval was deafening. Thousands of Valaxian voices raised in unison, a sound that seemed to shake the very mountains. As Zara looked out over the sea of faces, she felt a swell of emotion. This, she realized, was what the Concordat had spoken of, the power of unlikely alliances, of prejudices challenged and overcome. Crix stood tall beside her, his head held high for the first time since she'd met him. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the continuing cheers, "for helping me find my people, my purpose." Zara grinned, bumping her shoulder against his flank. "Hey, what are friends for? Now come on, we've got a galaxy to save." As they prepared to leave Valaxia, now accompanied by a contingent of eager Valaxian volunteers, Zara couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But with allies like these at her side, she was ready to face whatever the universe might throw at them. The unlikeliest of alliances had been forged. Now it was time to take the fight to the stars. The looming threat. As their fleet of ships, now bolstered by Valaxian vessels, cut through the inky blackness of space, Zara found herself in the war room of the Concordat's flagship. Holograms flickered around her, displaying real-time updates from across the galaxy. The news was grim. The Void Swarm has already consumed 3 star systems. Kronta, the crystalline being, chimed solemnly. Its facets pulsed with a deep, worried blue. Our projections indicate they will reach the core worlds within a standard month. Zara leaned over the holographic display, her brow furrowed in concentration. Beside her, Crix's cybernetic eye whirred as he analyzed the data streams. "We're outnumbered," Zara muttered, "and outgunned. How are we supposed to fight an enemy that can literally eat entire planets?" Shift, the ever-changing entity, coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape. "Not with brute force alone," it whispered. "The nullifier's strength lies in uniformity, in erasing diversity. Our strength must be in our differences, in the unique perspectives each species brings." Zilvax nodded, its iridescent skin rippling with agreement. "Which is why we need you, Zara and Crix. Your alliance has already inspired many. Now we need you to rally more to our cause." Crix tilted his massive head. "But how? We are but 2 beings in a vast galaxy." A new voice joined the conversation. "Sometimes 2 beings are all it takes to ignite a spark of hope." They turned to see Elder Vax entering the war room, accompanied by a diverse group of beings, representatives from species that had long been at odds with one another. "Word of your actions on Zephyria Station has spread," Vax explained. "The Arcturian Merchant Guild, the Zagonian Hive, even the reclusive Quantum Collective, all have pledged their support to our cause." Zara's eyes widened. "How? Last I checked, half of those groups were ready to blow each other out of the sky." The tall, elegant Arcturian stepped forward. "When faced with extinction, old grudges seem rather petty, don't they?" She extended a hand to Zara. "I am High Merchant Lyra. Your bravery and your friendship with Crix has shown us that there is another way." As introductions were made and strategies discussed, Zara felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were still outmatched, yes, but no longer alone. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. The holographic display flickered, showing a massive Void Swarm fleet emerging from hyperspace barely a light year away. "They found us," Shift hissed, its form becoming mist-like with agitation. Zilvax's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "No, they're not here for us. Look." The display zoomed in on the swarm's target, a small, unremarkable planet on the edge of a binary star system. "That's Harmony," the Zagonian representative buzzed in alarm. "A refugee world. Millions of displaced beings from across the galaxy have sought shelter there." Without hesitation, Zara turned to the assembled allies. "We have to help them. If we don't make a stand here now, then what are we even fighting for?" Crix nodded, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "Agreed. We cannot abandon the innocent." For a moment, silence reigned in the war room. Then, one by one, the representatives of the various species stepped forward, pledging their support. Elder Vax's cybernetic arm whirred as he clenched his fist. "The Valaxian fleet stands ready. We will not fail in our duty again." High Merchant Lyra's eyes gleamed with determination. "The Arcturian ships may not be warships, but we know a thing or two about hit-and-run tactics. Count us in." The Zagonian representative's antennae twitched with excitement. "Our swarm ships are yours to command. We will darken the skies with our numbers." As more and more allies voiced their support, Zara felt a swell of emotion. This was it, the moment that would define not just their lives, but the fate of the entire galaxy. She turned to Crix, seeing her own mix of fear and determination mirrored in his mismatched eyes. "Ready to save the world, big guy." Crix's translator conveyed a chuckle. "A world? Why stop there? Let's save the galaxy." As the Allied fleet prepared for battle, Zara couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. From outcasts to leaders, from strangers to the closest of friends. Whatever happened next, she knew that together, they stood a fighting chance. The ship's engines roared to life as they set course for Harmony. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin, and at its heart stood the unlikeliest of heroes, a human mechanic and a Valaxian warhound, united in their determination to prove that compassion, loyalty, and the bonds of friendship could overcome even the darkest of threats. As they plunged into the fray, Zara's voice rang out over the comms, a battle cry that would be remembered for eons to come, for harmony, for the galaxy, for life itself. And with that, the battle for the fate of all creation began. Triumph of the underdogs. The space above Harmony erupted into chaos as the Ally fleet engaged the Void Swarm. Zara and Crix found themselves in the thick of the action, coordinating efforts from a sleek Concordat fighter. Arcturian merchants, use your speed to draw their fire, Zara shouted into the comm. Zagonian swarm ships hit them from behind while they're distracted. Crix's cybernetic eye wared as he processed incoming data. Valaxian cruisers form a defensive line around the planet. Nothing gets through. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships of 100 different designs, crewed by beings who until recently had been bitter enemies, now fought as one against the encroaching darkness. But the Void Swarm was relentless. For every tendril they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Slowly but surely, they were being pushed back towards Harmony's atmosphere. "We can't keep this up forever," Zara muttered, wiping sweat from her brow as she banked hard to avoid a grasping tendril of void stuff. Crix growled in agreement. "We need to find their source, cut them off at the root." As if in answer to their dilemma, a transmission cut through the chaos. It was Shift, its form flickering wildly on the holographic display. "We've detected an anomaly at the heart of the swarm," the entity's voice wavered. "A tear in space-time. We believe it's their point of origin." Zilvax's melodious voice joined in. "If we can close that tear, we might be able to cut off their reinforcements." "Great," Zara replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she narrowly avoided another attack. "And how exactly do we do that?" Kronto's crystalline form pulsed urgently. "We have a device, a reality anchor. If we can get it to the center of the tear, it should force it closed." "Should?" Crix asked, his translator conveying his skepticism. "It's our only chance," Zilvax insisted. Zara and Crix exchanged a look. They both knew what needed to be done. "We'll do it," Zara said firmly. "Get us that device. We'll deliver it." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Their ship was quickly retrofitted with the reality anchor, a pulsing, otherworldly device that made Zara's hair stand on end just being near it. As they prepared to make their run, Elder Vax's voice crackled over the comm. "We'll clear a path for you. May the ancient stars guide your way." With a roar of engines, they plunged into the heart of the swarm. All around them, their allies fought with renewed vigor, carving a path through the seething mass of void creatures. As they neared the center, the fabric of reality itself seemed to warp and twist. Through the viewport, Zara could see a yawning chasm of utter nothingness, the tear from which the swarm was pouring. "Crix, I need you on weapons," Zara shouted over the din of battle. "I'll get us as close as I can." What followed was the most harrowing flight of Zara's life. She pushed the ship to its limits, dodging and weaving through a maelstrom of void tendrils and enemy fire. Crix's aim was true, blasting away any threats that got too close. Finally, they were within range of the tier. Zara's hands flew over the controls, prepping the reality anchor for deployment. "Ready?" she asked, her finger hovering over the launch button. Crix placed his paw on her shoulder. "Together," he growled. They pressed the button in unison. The reality anchor shot out towards the tier, trailing ethereal energy behind it. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent explosion of light and color, the tear began to close. The effect was immediate. Cut off from their source, the void swarm began to disintegrate. Cheers erupted across all frequencies as the Allied fleet pressed their advantage. But their celebration was premature. As the tear closed, it released a massive shockwave of energy. Zara and Crix's ship, caught at the epicenter, began to break apart. "We're losing power," Zara shouted, frantically trying to regain control. "Crix, can you?" Her words were cut off as a piece of debris struck the ship, sending them spinning into darkness. Zara awoke to the gentle beeping of medical equipment. She opened her eyes slowly, wincing at the bright lights of what appeared to be a hospital room. As her vision cleared, she saw a familiar face looking down at her. "Crix," she croaked, her voice hoarse. "You're okay." The Valaxian warhound's organic eye crinkled with relief. "As are you, my friend, though it was a close call for both of us." Over the next few days, as Zara recovered, she learned the full extent of their victory. The Void Swarm had been defeated, its connection to the nullifiers severed. The galaxy was safe, at least for now. But more than that, their actions had sparked a revolution. Species that had been at odds for millennia were now working together, inspired by the unlikely friendship between a human and a Valaxian. As Zara stood on the observation deck of the Concordat's flagship, watching the celebrations unfold on Harmony below, she felt a sense of awe at what they had accomplished. Crix padded up beside her, his cybernetic eye whirring softly. "What are you thinking?" he asked. Zara smiled, placing a hand on his broad back. "I'm thinking that this is just the beginning. We've shown the galaxy what's possible when we put aside our differences and work together. Now comes the hard part, making sure it lasts." Crix nodded sagely. "Indeed, but whatever challenges lie ahead, we will face them as we have faced everything else." Together, Zara finished, grinning at her friend. As they stood there, watching the stars, both knew that their greatest adventures were still to come. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers yet undiscovered. But with friends by their side and the bonds of unlikely alliances to support them, Zara and Crix were ready for whatever the universe might throw at them next. The tale of the human mechanic and the Valaxian warhound would be told for generations to come, a testament to the power of compassion, the strength found in diversity, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship that could bloom even in the darkest of times. And so, as a new era of galactic cooperation dawned, Zara and Crix stood ready to lead the way into a brighter, more united future for all.